check out ESPN Film's newly released 30 for 30 podcasts. From the producers of our award-winning documentary series, this is an amazing collection of sports stories you need to hear to believe. Speaking of amazing, Delta Airlines and the Fly Delta app make your travel experience amazingly easy with real-time bag tracking, e-boarding, and passport scanning during check-in. And don't forget to download 30 for 30 podcasts to fill your flight with stories that will keep you coming back for more.
This is the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
I'm Stephen A. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show, coming at you as I love to do over the airwaves of ESPN Radio. That's the 710 ESPN LA. That's 98.7 FM New York City. And, of course, that's nationwide over the airwaves of ESPN Radio, Sirius XM style. Channel 80. Number to call up, as always, is 866-729-ESPN. That's 866-729-3776. Got a jam-packed show coming your way today. But, obviously, listen, y'all, let me tell you something right now. I can't wait till sports get started. And I'm talking about in terms of the real football stuff that's going on. I'm talking about really, really football. I can't wait till I can get back to just talking about the games. I can't wait till I can get back to just talking about, Tom Brady and his greatness, and the list goes on and on. I can't wait for all of that. Absolutely, positively cannot wait. But obviously there's a couple of things that transpired over the last 24 hours. There's a lot of things that people are going to tend to disagree with. There are a lot of things that people are going to hotly contest. And I'm somebody that embraces all perspectives. I may disagree with you, but if you're cogent and clear and intelligent, I want to hear what the hell you have to say. This is one of the reasons why I believe that I never lose a debate, because I either win outright or I learn from those who school and educate and edify me, which enables me to be smarter than I was before I had a conversation with that person. I have no doubt that my man Carlton from Massachusetts eventually will call up to this show today. Carlton has espoused some views on this airwaves that I don't necessarily agree with 100%. But my God, do I respect this man and his intellect and his facts and his perspective. Because even if I don't agree with it, damn it, he makes great points. And it allows me to be better. We're expecting to have Will Cain on the show today. My man Max Kellerman obviously counters me every day, but Will shows up a few times a week. And it's specifically because I want him to be on the show. Because I have profound respect for his intellect, his presentation, and his point of view, even if I don't agree with it. And so we have to keep that in mind, particularly on a day like today when we're having this discussion. Because we saw what LeBron James tweeted. And we heard about what LeBron James said because he called for healing in the wake of Charlottesville, Virginia, and a tragedy that occurred there. But it followed what can only be described in my mind as a diatribe, albeit back and forth. It was still a diatribe on the part of the President of the United States of America, speaking once again, not just Saturday after he spoke Saturday, not just after Monday he came back and basically did a mea culpa and decried and condemned all types of racist behavior and things of that nature. But he also went a step further yesterday. He went back to Saturday. Matter of fact, he doubled down. And he spoke in a fashion that, quite frankly, should make us all very uncomfortable in my mind. Before I go any further, let's listen to our president speak on the issue of Charlottesville. White nationalists showing up in Charlottesville, Virginia this past Saturday. Let's listen to our president doubling down yet again.
I think there's blame on both sides. You look at both sides. I think there's blame on both sides. You had a group on one side and you had a group on the other, and they came at each other with clubs, and it was vicious, and it was horrible, and it was a horrible thing to watch. But there is another side. There was a group on this side, you can call them the left, or you've just called them the left, that came violently attacking the other group. So you can say what you want, but that's the way it is.
That was our president. Here was the response from Mr. LeBron James himself. Take it away, Nuno.
I have this platform, and I'm somebody that has a voice of command, and the only way for us to be able to get better as a society and us to get better as people is love. And that's the only way we're going to be able to conquer something at the end of the day. It's not about the guy that's the so-called president of the United States or whatever the case. It's not about a teacher that you don't feel like care about what's going on with you every day. It's not about people that you just don't feel like that's want to give the best energy and effort to you. It's about us. It's about us looking in the mirror. Kids all the way up to the adults, about all of us looking in the mirror and saying, what can we do better to help change?
That's LeBron James. Here's what you should have a problem with first and foremost. A 32-year-old professional basketball player handling himself in more of an adult fashion than the president of the United States of America. That's point number one. Point number two, and it's something that I wanted to say to a few of the listeners out there, many of the listeners out there, but specifically Carlton from Massachusetts, who will call onto this show, who's on the line waiting right now, as I just looked up, and who's always welcomed on this show. Their points are valid. This is not about politics. This is not about conservative or Republican. And those out there, I want to say this from everybody to the Joe Madisons who I idolize personally. On Urban View, Sirius XM Channel 126, and Karen Hunter, my sister. My baby girl, love her to death. We've been friends for over 25 years. She has her own show on Sirius XM, same channel as Joe Madison, Urban View, Channel 126, every day from 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time. But I also listen to my buddy Sean Hannity, who I think is off his rocker most of the time. And, of course, the great one, Mark Levin. I'm on both extremes, both sides of the spectrum. This is not about politics. This is not about partisanship. This is not about Republican or Democrat. This is about one individual who is conducting himself in such what I can only describe as a juvenile fashion that he's put the very fabric of our nation in jeopardy. I mean, if President Trump continues behaving the way that he has been behaving, there is the potential out there for him to spark a civil war because of the manner in which he chooses to conduct himself and communicate. That's my issue, not politics. Not politics. And as for those who will sit up there and try to act like there's some moral equivalent between the extremists on the left and the extremists on the right. Carlton was absolutely right yesterday, ladies and gentlemen. Don't get on him or other conservative pundits or other conservative callers or whomever when they point out the extremism on the left. It exists. Just like it exists on the right. But to use Saturday as a specific example, let's be clear. You had protesters out there in defense of and against those who are protesting people's very existence in this nation and the rights that have been accorded to minorities in this country, the African American community, the Latino community, et cetera, and to some degree, the Jewish community. They were in defense for rights for those people. In other words, they were in defense of the oppressed. The difference between them and the white nationalist group is that the white nationalist group is protesting their right to be oppressors. That is the difference. We ain't arguing over politics and policy here. We're literally arguing over a right to exist. And when that happens, and when that's the reality, that is not the time, as Van Jones on CNN would say, as other folks, even some of these Republican congressmen and senators have said on the record, that is not the time to articulate a moral equivalence. That is not the time. But the president doesn't care. Because his penchant for supporting those who support him and speaking out against those who speak out against him speaks to juvenile and pettiness and immaturity. All because of him and not this country. That's the problem. Doesn't matter whether you're conservative or Democrat or whatever. There's a whole bunch of leftists out there that one of the last things they want is Vice President Pence as the president of the United States. They take him any day of the week and twice on Sunday compared to this dude, and they're conservatives or Democrats. It doesn't matter. Because of what we're seeing. That's the point. 866-729-ESPN is the number to call up. That's 866-729-3776. I've touched on that. And I'll get to your calls in a minute, but not before what I touch on next. And that's that auction that took place on the campus of ESPN yesterday. It's in the national news. It's offended a lot of people. I work for this company. I'm proud of it. But it doesn't mean I'm not going to speak when necessary. I don't know about the rest of y'all, but I'm just getting started. You are listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio.
You're listening to Love Advice with Leanne. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, Leanne. Longtime listener, first-time caller. Why, in your professional opinion, do you never take my calls off the air?
Is this Carl?
Yep, it's Carl. I mean, we had a few dates. Everything was great. I thought,
Well, you know, when you switch to Geico, you could save a lot of money on car insurance.
Okay, awesome.
You should call them.
I will.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Cain coming on in approximately 10 minutes or so right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio, Stephen A. Smith Show. And we'll get into what I just finished talking about in regards to Donald Trump, regards to Lebron James and others. One of the other things that we'll get into is what transpired yesterday on the campus of ESPN, Bristol, Connecticut. Obviously, it was a marathon day, fantasy football. I'm not going to lie. I'll confess to you, I dreaded being a part of it, but it was only because I was sleepy as hell. I mean, you're getting up 6:30 in the morning to do first take, and I was on there at 11 o'clock at night, and, you know, fantasy football just ain't my thing. But, damn it, the boss wanted me to do it. I did it. That's what you do, you know. I just wish I could have, you know, I wish I wasn't so tired. But that's on me. Having said all of that, I had no problem, pretty much for the most part, with the fantasy football day, the marathon. But there was something that gained national attention because ESPN aired an auction on fantasy football. Not the first time. Auctions happen in fantasy football. That's what comes with it. But the other side to that is, with the auction, it heightened some sensitivities and raised some antennas because of, in the people's minds, black athletes being auctioned. Black athletes weren't the only one auctioned. Tom Brady was auctioned. Rob Gronkowski was auctioned. We get all of that. But, ladies and gentlemen, context is everything. So is timing. So is perspective. Timing and context. Charlottesville, Virginia just happened, where you see a divide. And even though a lot of those protesters, I'd say about 70% according to them, who were against the white nationalists, 70% of them was white going up against the white nationalists. So let's be fair and let's be accurate in that regard. But if you are a minority, black, Latino, etc., there's going to be a heightened level of sensitivity at that particular moment in time. But here's what really resonates and what I think everybody missed. The movie Get Out was a big-time movie that was out months ago. Ladies and gentlemen, that movie was about black folks being kidnapped and literally lobotomized into becoming black in pigmentation only. But everything about them psychologically and all of that other stuff was something else. And in that movie, there was an auction that took place. And the auction was with an abundance of white folks bidding on who would get the black person that had been lobotomized. That's how ESPN's fantasy football auction looked yesterday. And for my 2 cents, I'm telling you, there ain't no way in hell that whoever came up with that idea didn't see the movie Get Out. Black folks have been raving about the movie. Maybe they didn't. Let me take that back, because I don't definitively know, and I don't want to accuse anybody of having seen the movie and depicting them as trying to imitate it. But damn it, it's too close for comfort. Black folks loved that movie. We saw it. And make no mistake about it, that has something to do with the fallout from it. I want to applaud ESPN's boss, John Skipper, for coming out and apologizing. Him saying, quote, this is a statement in-house. And I think it's been publicized in USA Today and other places, by the way. John Skipper, as part of the ESPN Fantasy Football Marathon last night, we had segments depicting an auction draft. For those of us who play fantasy sports, we know that auction drafts are a common and increasingly popular form of drafting players for fantasy teams. While the marathon auction segment showed a diverse group of top NFL players up for bid, the segments appeared as only a white auctioneer and a group of mostly white fans bidding on black football players. Simply put, this was not appropriate, particularly given the racially charged events outside of sports that occurred this past weekend in Charlottesville, Virginia. We have responded to media inquiries directly with an apology to fans and by posting the following statement on ESPN Media Zone. Quote, auction drafts are a common part of fantasy football, and ESPN segments replicated an auction draft with a diverse slate of top professional football players. Without that context, we understand the optics could be portrayed as offensive, and we apologize. That was a statement from ESPN. I'm proud to work at ESPN. I've often said, whether it's a conscience, you understand, or standards, I'd much rather work for a company that has them rather than one in search of them. And I believe I work for a company that has them. I'm proud to work for John Skipper. I'm proud to work for Connor Shell. I'm proud to work for Norby Williamson. I'm proud to work for Charles Keller. I'm proud to work for Dave Roberts. I'm proud to work for Rob King. But particularly as it pertains to the latter two, Dave Roberts and Rob King, they happen to be African Americans, absolutely elite at their chosen profession. Look up their resumes. None of them were in that room. None of them were consulted. Neither of them were approached, along with Leon Carter, the former sports editor for the New York Daily News, who's also an executive in this company. Nobody black was in the room when that particular decision was made to do this show, from my understanding. And so what it speaks to is the level of diversity and what have you. If you're white and you're saying, what's the big deal, what's the big deal, you're not wrong. You just don't get it. It's not the job of an African American or a Latino or somebody from an impoverished community in our nation to view things through your lens. And to be quite honest with you, it's not always the job of someone white to look at things through our lens. But at least fall back and have an elevated level of compassion when it comes to things that you may not understand because you don't live in our skin. And you may not be able to see things the way we see them. John Skipper's apology alludes to that on behalf of the company. A mistake was made. It should not happen again. And this proves that under all circumstances, there should always be diversity in a room, because it's not just about people who look differently. It's about people who may think differently. So you know definitively that you've covered all sides before reaching a final conclusion on where you go from here and what direction it takes you. That's the lesson we learned from this. People were right to criticize ESPN for this. We were wrong. But even though I wasn't in that room and I wasn't consulted, and Dave Roberts and Rob King and others weren't in that room, and we weren't consulted on this particular platform, notice how I said the word we. You don't get to work for a company, take their check, stand up here with a radio show or a television show, and then throw them to the wolves as if they stand alone. No, I work here. I said us. They didn't make the mistake. We did. We weren't involved enough. We should have insisted. They may be even more culpable, and they've apologized for it. But you don't jump ship just because people made mistakes. You stand up together, and you correct errors. That's what teams do. And at ESPN, we're a team. But it doesn't mean that I'm going to go out and act like we didn't make a mistake. This should not have happened. And it should never happen again. And you may disagree as a white person or as a fantasy football fan, and you may think there's no big deal to it at all. Well, guess what? There's a whole bunch of minorities in this country who beg to differ. And just like you have a right to your feelings, we have a right to ours. And in the end, remember what Charles Mann, a former Washington Redskins, once said when Jack Kent Cooke didn't want to change the name of the Redskins because it was offensive to Native Americans. Charles Mann said, how I feel doesn't matter. It's how they feel. They're the ones who are the Native Americans. And if that's how they feel, we should at least care. It's really that simple, y'all. Really doesn't get that much more complicated than that. 866-729-ESPN. It's 866-729-3776. Remember, caring is where it all starts. I've said this on many, many occasions, and I'll say it again. Rush Limbaugh said what he said when he was an employee of ESPN about Donovan McNabb. You know, the media is desirous that a black quarterback not do well. Don Armas called the Rutgers women's basketball team nappy-headed you-know-what. Are you ready for this, ladies and gentlemen? I never thought either one of them should have been fired because of what they said. I thought they made honest mistakes. It was only when they were exposed to their mistakes and elected to double down with their initial reaction, as opposed to simply apologizing and recognizing that you may have offended other people. That was the crime, not the mistake. John Skipper didn't double down. ESPN didn't double down. We messed up, and we owned it. And in our society, when you do that, you make it a better way for everybody. Because if we're really being honest about our real problem with our president right now, ain't that what we're really complaining about? It's not just the mistakes that the man makes. It's the fact that he doubles down so we recognize it's not a mistake at all. It's fully his intent. And it doesn't represent most of us. 866-729-ESPN is the number to call up. Will Cain up next with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio.
Guess what? You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it! 35 minutes past hour number one back here on the Stephen A. Smith Show. ESPN Radio. My honor and privilege to have my next guest on the line, particularly with issues of this sensitivity. One of my partners in crime on First Take, you know, I allow him to come on a couple of times a week. You know, I get tired of beating him up. I want to beat him up too much. He's a friend of mine, and, you know, so I don't want to beat him up too badly. I'm talking about the one and only Will Cain, sitting right next to me. What's going on, big boy? How you doing, man?
Don't act like you take it easy on me. We'll take it easy on Will so he'll come back. No. Closer to being your punching bag.
I got you. Let's get right into it, man. I mean, listen, in interest of full disclosure, you know, you have a conservative background. You are a lawyer by profession. We're happy to have you here at ESPN. You're very, very knowledgeable, except for when you go up against me.
Except for my non-basketball knowing self.
Yes.
You keep trotting that out, I'm going to come back at you someday.
You know, but in all seriousness, I was really anxious to get your perspective. First on watching your president talk yesterday and seeing the reaction from LeBron James. What came through your mind, Will? What were your thoughts?
Why'd you say watching your president talk yesterday?
Our president.
Oh, okay.
I mean, he's the president of the United States. That's what I mean by that. Nothing more. I'm not one of those that's going to act like he's not the president when he is the president.
Well, you know, just as a quick side note, I think one of the things that I try to do in any debate, which I think helps me, number one, in the debate, but number two is a real act of what I hope to be is respect, is I listen. I listen to what you say.
Right.
And I will listen to the words coming out of your mouth. So when you said that, it made me wonder, what are we doing here? Because you know this. I've already talked to you about this morning. I believe precision is important.
Okay.
So I like what LeBron said 70% of the way. I think LeBron has the right. I think he did it in the right forum. He didn't do it on a basketball court. He didn't do it during the national anthem. He has political opinions.
Mm-hmm.
It's good to hear them.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with most of what he said. I guess I never need to kind of try to gloss over that fact because it's the main thing people latch on to. I agree. The president fell short in the last 2 or 3 days, professionally and morally. And that's coming from the conservative background you just talked about.
Sure.
But it doesn't make me sign up for LeBron 100% of the way, meaning I don't think he should have said our so-called president because it's an office. More than a man, it's an office. And whether or not it's Barack Obama or Donald Trump, I don't think you question the legitimacy. And I don't think when he tweeted that Trump made hate fashionable, I don't think that's accurate either. I think he did some things. I think he made moral equivalencies. I think he made some inappropriate comparisons. I think he made some caveats. I don't think he made it fashionable. But believe me on this, though. Those moral equivalencies, those comparisons, those caveats, those are condemnable, too. You should. The president should be criticized for doing that. But just do it accurately.
How do you feel about LeBron James and other athletes using their platforms, whatever they may be, to speaking out in the fashion that they speak out?
I'm curious to see what you say on this, too. I don't mind anybody, athlete or not, giving their opinion when it is informed. It's just my only threshold. It's my only requirement. Do you know what you're talking about? You don't have to agree with me. And that's the hard thing for a lot of people, by the way. That's what they really want. When an athlete speaks out, do they agree with me or do they disagree with me? Because that's the only way they can see if you're informed or not, right? I think you're incredibly informed, Stephen A. I think you're incredibly wrong. Often. Those things don't have to go together. You process the information, you read, you look at it all, you have it at your fingertips.
And we have different perspectives.
And you come to the wrong conclusion.
And I think the same thing about you. I think you come to the wrong conclusion almost all the time. But I don't hold it against you because I know that you're well informed. We're talking to Will Cain right here with Stephen A. on the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio. See, the thing about it is when we talk about LeBron James and he's talking about the so-called president, you and I, perfect example about perspectives. I think you took it differently than I took it. You took it as him not respecting the office.
Or questioning the legitimacy of.
Right, or questioning the legitimacy of. I took it as him accusing the president of disrespecting the office himself, which is why he refuses to recognize this individual when he said the so-called president. I don't think it had anything to do with the election. Hillary Clinton, whether she should have won or lost. I don't think it had anything to do with the fact that that wasn't his preferred candidate since he campaigned for Hillary. I think it has everything to do with the fact that he talked about love and he talked about people coming together, and he believes this guy to be the most divisive president in the history of America.
Yeah, but he's still the president. And Max Kellerman brought this up this morning when you and I debated on First Take. He said, do you not think the president himself has diminished it? Well, even if I do, and here's the parenthetical that I find immaterial to this, I do, it doesn't make it right for LeBron to. So just if the president himself and some of his actions have diminished the office, whether or not it's his behavior or his positions, it doesn't mean LeBron should do the same. Two wrongs do not make a right.
Sure, go ahead.
This is the bow I want to put on this. You asked me, what do I think about athletes speaking out?
Yeah.
I just don't think many of them are informed in the same way you are. Right or wrong, conclusions that I agree with or not, I don't think they've gone through the same process that you, Stephen A. Smith, or I have. I don't think they've given it the rigorous thought that we have. I don't think they've read to the extent that we have for the vast majority. There are informed athletes. I'll give you Richard Sherman, who I still disagree with often, but he's informed.
One of the things that I see and where you and I part ways to some degree on this is just like Roger Goodell. And he talked about, he's the commissioner of the National Football League. And granted, the question may have been put out of context or what have you. This is according to the NFL. But in the end, what his words were is that there's a right place and time. I'm paraphrasing here. There's a right place and time to actually protest. And my attitude is that to the oppressed, first of all, let's think about what a protest is. A protest the intent of a protest is not to make you comfortable. It's not to make you feel good. It's not to make you feel okay. All right, we're fine. We'll block off the streets. And okay, you can walk around with your picket signs and you can make noise here. Don't inconvenience traffic. Don't inconvenience people's lives or whatever the case was. Well, people who are protesting are usually feeling that's exactly what's happening to them. So if I see a commissioner for the National Football League, or any other sport for that matter, speaking in that fashion and people co-signing with that, my belief is, A, are you paying attention to what a protest really is? And B, are you paying attention more to your comfort or the fact that people who feel demonized, who feel ostracized, who feel disenfranchised, have a right to inconvenience you. Doesn't mean exacting violence, doesn't mean being lawless, but inconveniencing you, that's the whole purpose, Will.
Okay, all right, this is good. Now, here is something I hear a lot on social media. Beyond Will, you just don't get it.
Okay.
You just don't get it. Who are you to tell the oppressed, and you just alluded to this, who are you to tell the oppressed how and when they can protest? Who are you, Will, when it comes to the fantasy football auction, which we can get into? Who are you to tell a minority when they can be offended? It's not what I'm doing. Because you said a protest is designed to make you uncomfortable. You know what else a protest is designed to do? Accomplish something. Mm-hmm. So you can judge the quality or the righteousness of the form of a protest by whether or not it's going to actually accomplish what it says it wants to accomplish. So when I take Colin Kaepernick and I say, I criticize the way he made that protest, do you know what I'm criticizing? Beyond the fact that it offended me on a superficial level, not his substance, his form.
Where did it get him?
Where'd it get him, man? He offended more people by kneeling for the national anthem. He offended more people than he could potentially persuade over to his cause. That's why you can question
this. Black folks will say he also galvanized a lot of folks. You see what I'm saying? They'll say that he also galvanized a lot of folks because you got people in an uproar.
We've got to have a number on that, though, right? We haven't made a change.
I feel you, but we don't have a number either way. We assume and we surmise that, again, you have a large segment of the populace that really were opposed and had a problem with them. But black folks will tell you there's millions of black folks that would stand up in defense of him. You see what I'm saying?
Well, there are people. I mean, of course. Mm-hmm. But look, it's just theater if you don't have a point. It's just theater.
Well, we agree there.
It's just theater if you're not trying to make a change.
Got it.
So do you know what you want to make a change on?
That's fair. Will Cain right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. Before I let you get on out of here, we debated about the whole ESPN auction thing. Share with my audience what your beliefs are, what your feelings are about the ESPN auction. Just go ahead.
Stephen, I don't see it, man. I just don't see it. And I just think if you're offended by this fantasy football auction, something that's been going on for decades and in thousands of homes across this country on a yearly basis, if you're offended by it, I truly believe, man, I think you're trying to be offended. Mm-hmm. I really do. I can squint, and I said it this morning to you, right, I can squint and see it. Yeah. I see the parallels to the ugly history of slave auctions. But come on. Like, that's not what's going on here. And it doesn't even look like that. They sold Gronk. They sold Brady. It's a fantasy football auction.
Now, you know it's not about the players that they would auction it off. It wasn't that. It was about the optics of the audience that was bidding and how it imitated the movie Get Out, like I told you. Yeah. And, you try to dismiss it, but I'm like, this movie was a hit. Well, black folks like the movie, man.
I'm just not ready.
And I'm just trying to tell you that it did resonate with all. Like, damn it, this movie just came out. Dudes were being lobotomized. And,
get out of here with that. Man, Get Out's not our new moral guidepost.
I agree with that. I'm not going that far. But let me ask you this question real quick before you go. Did you see the movie?
I did.
You saw the movie.
Yeah.
And when you saw the movie and then you saw what you saw with the auction, nothing.
I can honestly tell you nothing.
And that's fair because obviously a lot of us feel differently than Will Cain. I'm so surprised. I'm so surprised. Appreciate you, man.
Thanks, Stephen.
Thanks a lot, brother. One and only Will Cain right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio, 866-729-ESPN. That's 866-729-3776. You know what? I might actually let you sub for me if I ever take any days off. You know what I'm saying? I might let you do that.
I love all the permissions you grant me.
Just to be the antithesis of yours truly. I think my audience will like that. And then I got to come in back the next day and just correct everything you said.
I'll give you content.
How about that? Appreciate you, bro. Thanks so much. Your phone calls and more up next with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
The phones we go right here on the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio. Calvin, you're live with Stephen A. What's going on, Cal? How are you?
What's going on, Stephen A., man? I just want to give you a quick couple shout-outs. I respect everything you said this morning, but here's my thing with the president, man, that people didn't touch down upon.
Okay.
Where did he come out his mouth and ever apologize to the victim's family or just he could fly his private jet there to go say, hey, I'm sorry for the condolences?
Stop right there. He never apologizes for anything.
You got me.
Anything. Anything. This dude has not, he won't apologize for stepping on your foot by accident.
That's true.
It's nothing. I challenge somebody to show me one place where he's apologized for anything. Listen, I'm not being disrespectful. I'm being factual.
That's true.
Narcissism is his middle name.
I agree with you. I mean, and my thing is, Stephen A., it's kind of like, I agree with everything with the Ezekiel Elliott thing in retrospect. And the thing is, like, when can people as Americans start holding somebody like this accountable or responsible? I mean, could it be something mentally not there? I mean, because,
he is being held responsible. He's been suspended 6 games.
Well, no, I was talking about Mr. Trump.
Gotcha.
That's all. That's all I meant to say. Like, where can we start holding him responsible? Because, I mean, it has to be something mentally there. And, represent the nation in a great country.
Here's the only way. Here's the only way you can hold him responsible, by not working with him, because he's in office. He's the president. Plus, he's a billionaire. And I'm not encouraging anybody to do that. Because listen, we're a cyclical society. I mean, what goes around comes around. It's just the way that it goes. You've got Democrats. You've got Republicans. The president and his issues have nothing to do with partisan politics. We're talking about the way he's behaving. We're not talking policy. And that's why it's silly for anybody to come to his defense.
True indeed.
It's not about anything else but behavior. Listen, you can sit up there and knock what executive orders he's handed out, Supreme Court justices, and all of this other stuff. Damn it, get over it. He won the presidency. He has the right to do it. You didn't like that people found an excuse to insult George W. Bush on the left. They found a reason to insult Bill Clinton on the right. They found a reason to insult H.W. They found a reason to insult Reagan. It comes with the territory. But this is different. This is about a statesman representing 350-plus million Americans. And you don't act the way that he's been acting in that position. This is not any license to condemn conservatives or anybody else. This is a license to call to the carpet a president that has to represent us all, or go back to handling his own business and leave that job to somebody else. Hour number 2 up next. Your phone calls and more. We got a lot to talk about right here on the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio. Don't touch that dial.
That's just a sample of what you'll hear on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Weekdays at 1 p.m. Eastern on Sirius XM Channel 80 and the ESPN app.
Check out ESPN Films' newly released 30 for 30 podcasts. From the producers of our award-winning documentary series, this is an amazing collection of sports stories you need to hear to believe. Speaking of amazing, Delta Airlines and the Fly Delta app make your travel experience amazingly easy with real-time bag tracking, e-boarding, and passport scanning during check-in. And don't forget to download 30 for 30 podcasts to fill your flight with stories that will keep you coming back for more.
This is the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
I'm Stephen A. Hour number 2. The Stephen A. Smith Show here with you for the next hour or so over the airwaves of ESPN Radio. Sirius XM Channel 80. Number to call up as always is 866-729-ESPN. That's 866-729-3776. Hollywood Henderson. Remember that name? Used to star for the Dallas Cowboys years ago. Harold Henderson. Former chairman of the NFL's Management Council Executive Committee. Also was the arbiter for the appeal hearings of former Cowboys defensive end Greg Hardy. And then Minnesota Vikings running back Adrian Peterson. He has been appointed the arbiter for Dallas Cowboys running back Ezekiel Elliott's appeal hearing on August 29th. I don't think that it's a big deal that, he's the guy that reduced Greg Hardy's game from 10 to 4. You got to remember, the issue was that Roger Goodell installed that penalty retroactively. That the penalty that Greg Hardy received from Roger Goodell in the league office was before the new domestic violence policy was implemented into the NFL bylaws, not after. The incident occurred with Greg Hardy before, not after. That's why they had to reduce the penalty from 10 to 4 games. Ezekiel Elliott doesn't have that luxury. Anyway, let's get back to the phones at 866-729-3776, 866-729-ESPN. Carlton in Massachusetts, you've held on long enough, buddy. Good afternoon. Thank you for calling. Go ahead.
I'm not going to be as kind as Will Cain. Have you lost your collective mind, Stephen A. Smith?
Oh, Lord.
I'm a libertarian. I'm no fan of Donald Trump's, okay?
Oh, I apologize. I'm sorry. I did misquote you on that one. That's my apology. That's my,
No. I think you're reasonably accurate. Because yesterday I said I agreed wholeheartedly that there were violent individuals on both sides of the coin with regard to the Charlottesville protests. But if we, Stephen A., start to set the standard by what offends people, you are toast, my friend. You offend people every day of your life. LeBron probably offended 50-plus million people who voted for Donald Trump today, okay? So if offending someone is the new standard, you and LeBron are both history, my friend. And as far as that fantasy football auction goes, ESPN just did a cost-benefit analysis, and they said, it's only going to cost us this to make an apology, i.e. nothing, and the benefit is it'll get a whole bunch of people who are crazy off of our backs. What if the social justice warriors wanted certain ESPN executives fired because of it, Stephen A.? Would you then maintain that, they're right. Their offense of something that literally had nothing to do with slavery, nothing to do with oppression of African Americans is justified. And yes, we should fire ESPN executives?
No, but here's the deal, Carlton, and I appreciate your questions, so allow me to answer them. First things first, when you bring up in terms of issues of offending or whatever the case may be, we're talking about the President of the United States. We're not talking about an average individual. We're talking about a leader of the free world. We're talking about somebody whose words can cause wars. I'm sure you can have a heightened level of sensitivity to that due to the office and the position he holds. And not only that, condemning how somebody may be acting as an individual is not and I don't agree with it condemning all those who voted for him. I don't think that all people who voted for him are one thing or another, whatever derogatory or incendiary labels people want to come up with. I don't buy into that stuff. Never have, never will. But what we saw this past Saturday is tantamount to what I believe, Carlton, that I explained. You have those who were in opposition of a white nationalist group whose objective is to oppress. I'm talking about them, meaning the white nationalist group. I'm not talking about people who support Trump. I'm not talking about people who support conservative views. I'm not talking about people whose politics may be different than mine or yours or anybody else. I'm talking about somebody who seems to be catering to a group of individuals whose objective is to suppress anyone that doesn't believe precisely what they believe. They spoke against Jews. They spoke against minorities. They spoke about how they want to be in this country and they want others out. I don't think that's something that can be ignored. And I'm sure you know this. Even in Germany, do you know the swastika is outlawed? It's outlawed. So we take these positions, and somehow, some way, you do take a moral high ground because it's the betterment of the whole. And if a particular individual's behavior or sensitivities seems allergic to such things, they have a right to live in this country, make money, work, and all of this other stuff. I'm not sure they have the right to be the president of the United States.
Well, look it. You're an intelligent human being. You know that a large fraction of the people that were down there at Charlottesville on the, quote, alt-right side of things were protesting the removal
of the Robert E. Lee statue,
and the renaming of the park. And their protest was hijacked by a bunch of nutcase Nazi white supremacists, and Donald Trump pointed that out. You're also a smart enough person to know that the people opposed to the white nationalists, white supremacist Nazi group down there, legitimate sane people on the left, they are hijacked. Their counter movement is hijacked by the Antifa, crazy anarchist leftist group that just wants to promote violence and was carrying sticks and had helmets on.
But stop right there, Carlton, because my point to you is that give you that. Don't argue with that. Accept and embrace what you just said.
That's what Trump said, though, Stephen A. That's what Trump said.
I'm going to a particular place. I understand your point, but what I'm trying to say to you is this. when he sits up there and he hesitates on Saturday to call it what it is in terms of what he saw as it pertains to that particular element, and you have a former leader of the KKK coming out to endorse him, you're going to see athletes like LeBron James and others step up and speak out because, again, you have to decry and lambaste and immediately knock down that kind of rhetoric because of the position that you're in. Carlton calling me up on the phone and explaining it the way that you do is to be embraced and accepted. I can understand that. Even if we disagree with you, we can at least respect where you're coming from. The fact of the matter is that you have a leader of the free world who didn't elect to do so that way, Carlton, and he's 71 years of age, and he doesn't mind if his language is being divisive, and it may be for the sole intent reason that he's catering to a base who he believes supported him and got in an office, and you know he has a penchant for supporting those who support him and condemning those who don't support him in a very juvenile fashion. So as an individual in that position, Carlton, why come to his defense at this particular moment in terms of what he said when you know there was so much more that he said and so much more that he did not say, considering the position that he is actually in?
Well, listen, I dislike the man immensely. I can't stress that enough. His message was 100% correct and accurate. And here's the risk.
That's not true.
And we are sliding in this direction, Stephen A., and you brought this up on your program today.
Sure.
Both arguments are being hijacked by the radicals on the two sides. So the left wants to hear nothing about the decent people that were down there just protesting the removal of a historical statue that's important to them. Maybe offensive to somebody else, but it's important to them, okay? And the right, their arguments being hijacked by the crazy Nazis, white supremacists. We are sliding towards civil conflict because we are allowing radical crazies on both sides to hijack the arguments.
Yes,
People that dislike Donald Trump will not listen to a word he says.
But check this out. But Carlton, before I let you go, let's be clear about something here. The radicals on both sides always existed. But where neutrality came into play, where decorum and decency came into play, when a higher moral ground came into play, was when the commander-in-chief was the statesman that he was supposed to be because he understood that he represented the United States of America as opposed to himself. And since you absolutely positively know that this individual is not that guy in terms of how he conducts himself, even if you believe what he said was factually correct, the fact of the matter is presentation and delivery comes into play because it's able to be manipulated and thereby interpreted in a different fashion, which is something every president that has ever represented this nation recognizes. You recognize that. You cannot absolve anybody from that in his position. That is my point. That is the point of a vast majority of Americans who are sitting here and watching this. It's not about politics. It's not about your beliefs. It's not about your partisanship. It's not about any of that. It's about a certain standard level of behavior and decorum that comes with anything that we do, whether it's LeBron James, a basketball player. How do you feel about that, Carlton, that a 32-year-old basketball player knows how to act better than your president? How do you feel about that?
He probably, that basketball player who, I agree with Will Cain, I agree with 70% of what LeBron said, but that basketball player who said our so-called president probably offended 40, 45 million decent Americans. You know, you may say that 10% of the people that voted for him are just crazy, and, you know, the 1%
Carlton, what am I missing? What am I missing? How did he offend them real quickly? How did he offend them?
Donald's not our so-called president. He is our president. I hate to tell you, but 50-something million
Time out,
people.
Carlton. That's where I'm going. You saying the so-called president because the man gives you the impression that he only wants to represent a segment of the populace as opposed to all of us is not insulting everybody. It's insulting him.
Well, but it's insulting the people that also voted for him.
But the people that voted for him because of policies they believed he would enact. They didn't expect him to act like this.
A huge fraction of the people that voted for him, it was in opposition.
Wait a minute, Carlton. So you're trying to tell me the 60+ million people that voted for our president, that LeBron just called the so-called president, those 60 million people were okay and thought that this man was going to stand up there and talk about Senator McCain like I want my heroes to be guys that don't get caught.
Again, I think Donald Trump is off the reservation in 90% of what he says.
But that's my point.
That's not the quote you played on First Take. Charlottesville.
Hold on, Carlton. So in other words, when LeBron said that about him, you think he's off the reservation. You didn't take it as a personal insult to you. You knew it for what it was, an insult to the president.
I thought he was specifically referring to Donald Trump's comments about Charlottesville. And I think if that's what LeBron was referring to, LeBron is wrong about those comments.
He's talking about everything, Carlton.
Well, if he's talking about everything, then I'm more in agreement with him than we think.
I got you. That's all I'm saying. Let's not personalize it if you're a voter like somebody's talking about you. They're talking about his behavior and saying, how can you not stand up as Americans, knowing what the fabric of this country is, what it represents, what it stands for, and stand for that? Not as a politician or anything like that. As a human being, your daughter is married to a Jewish person. And there were people marching talking about get rid of the Jews. And you have to speak up about that immediately. That's all. That's all. There's nothing more to it than that. Gotta go. Appreciate the call as always, Carlton. Back with your calls in more in a minute. It's Stephen A. on ESPN Radio.
Okay, keep your eyes closed.
Okay.
I want to show you my first ever painting.
All right.
Okay. Open your eyes.
Oh, that's a lot of colors and shapes.
So be honest. What do you think?
Well, I like how if you switch to Geico, you could save hundreds of dollars on car insurance.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Here, why don't I hold your paintbrush while you call them?
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
To the phones we go right here on the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio. Gavin, you're live with Stephen A. Talk to me, man. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Go ahead, sir.
Man, to be honest, I'm kind of starstruck right now. I've been watching you since I was in high school.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Don't worry about it. I breathe and go to the toilet just like everybody else, but go ahead.
Well, to be honest, I just wanted to say that I really kind of agree with you and a little bit of what Will Cain said on your show earlier when y'all were talking about the fantasy football auction earlier.
Okay. We had two different points of views. What was your view?
Well, I mean, I really agree with where y'all coming from. I mean, I just don't understand how people can sit in that room and ideal that and visualize that and don't see how that could not offend people. I mean, but I do agree with Will Cain at the same time saying that I think that people that are getting so offended and so riled up by it are kind of reaching a little bit. You know what I mean?
Well, they may be reaching because they're attaching intent. And I think a legitimate argument could be made that nobody intended for that to happen. It's fantasy football, for crying out loud. There was nobody in the room that was intended to offend anybody. And I certainly don't mean to kind of make that kind of assertion about my colleagues here at ESPN. But the reality is that no one was in that room with a different perspective to really educate folks on how that can look. And they didn't know better. And it's not for folks to tell people how something should look. You know, listen, I have this philosophy, okay? I know quite a few Jewish people. I don't define for them what they should be offended by. I let them tell me, and I make sure I don't do it. I don't define for my white brothers and sisters what offends you. I let you tell me, and I make sure I don't do it. And the same is applicable to everybody. You know, if there is one problem, and why race is such a prevalent discussion, at its core, it's not just because of what people are oblivious to. It's what my man Joe Madison on Sirius XM's Urban View Channel 126 every weekday morning from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. It's what he calls conscientious stupidity. It's this, you know better, or you could easily learn better and just don't want to.
No, I agree 100%.
And so
somebody in that room,
right?
That would be offensive to some people. Like, they should be at least like, whoa, hey, maybe that could be taken the wrong way, especially in the way they segmented it. Like, if you would have ran it all together, it might have been better. And especially given the context, the timing of everything, I just don't see how somebody didn't realize it.
Well, listen, it happens. People make mistakes. I'm certainly not trying to let anybody off the hook. But like I said, I'm a team player. I work here too, and I walk through these doors, and everybody ain't perfect. And racism exists everywhere. But this is one hell of a place to work. There's diversity in bodies. There's diversity in thinking. There's diversity in performances. There's a diversity in visions. It's just that people have got to step up and make sure that you have diversity in those rooms when decisions are being made, so if mistakes like this can be avoided. And it's incumbent upon all of us to come together as a team and to make sure that that's exactly what we do. I got to run. I appreciate the call. Let's go to CB in Pasadena. You're live with Stephen A. What's up?
Yeah.
No rhyming. Just go ahead and get to your point, brother. Go ahead.
The profound statements. I had to chime in on this today because, it's been egregious, unconstitutional, and blasphemous, the things that have gone on in the last few days. But, thinking of platforms, Stephen A., I know you're a boxing fan and a boxing enthusiast. And the platforms with the most influential Afro-American who did speak up on the behalf of Afro-Americans and didn't want to go to the Vietnam War was, in American history, he was transcending with his pride. And that was the great Muhammad Ali. I saw some documentary on Muhammad Ali. He is my new hero. I didn't know he was that outspoken. And he could rhyme off the top of his head. And he did some things that also helped develop not only these players today, but Afro-Americans in general with pride and have self-confidence about yourself. And now the athletes, they speak out and through consciousness and also confidence, they have also become an icon and some of the players. But now the players, like you said, nowadays they begin scrutinized for speaking out. I know in this politically correct world, pardon me, there's a lot of things, you may step on some people's toes. But Muhammad Ali was probably one of my big. But I did have a piece. This is not no rhyme or nothing.
Let's hurry up, man. Go ahead. Say what you got to say.
Okay, can I do it? Just give me a minute and a half.
No, I'm not going to give you a minute and a half. That's 94 seconds. You can't get it, man. You got to call back another day, CB. I appreciate it. Can't do that. Should have made it. Should start off that way. Let's go to Chris in L.A. You're live with Stephen A. What's up, Chris?
Hey, Stephen A. I think Will Cain's comments just kind of epitomizes the problem that people have in that if you're not a minority, you really, truly can't appreciate all of the things that are sensitive to minorities, such as the fantasy football thing. And for me, I think it's wrong to say someone shouldn't be sensitive to certain things. And it's analogous to a woman being raped. I cannot truly understand that feeling. And if she is apprehensive about going to a bar where it may have happened, or reminds her, or a park, I shouldn't say, well, that was 5 years ago. You should be a little bit past that now. I can't tell her how and when she should be sensitive to something. I just need to respect that. And I think I don't get mad at people like Will Cain because it comes from a place of ignorance. They just do not understand it, and they don't realize they don't understand.
Well, but that's being you. And I think one of the problems that we have to be honest about within our own community is that a lot of times we get mad at people for their ignorance, as opposed to accepting they just don't know. So tell them.
Right.
Because what I would look at folks from other races and say is just the same way you want us to understand your ignorance and what you may be oblivious to, accord the same respect and compassion to those from the African American community when they just may not get it and they may not understand, and explain it to them and then judge them accordingly. Don't sit up there and leave them in the dark but judge them as if they're in the light and they intentionally conducted themselves a certain way. Maybe if you enlighten them, you might see how they act, and it may garner a stronger level of compassion if you thought fair-minded enough that way.
Yeah, you have to try to enlighten them, but I think it's just insensitive for them to say, well, you should feel this way. That's really not truly understanding the person in that situation.
Got it. All right, man. I appreciate the call. Thank you so much. 866-729-ESPN. That's 866-729-3776. More of the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio in a minute.
Guess what? You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it. Back to the phones we go. Right here, the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio. Jonathan in Manhattan, you're live with Stephen A. Talk to me, man.
Hey, Stephen A. Big fan of your show, big fan of your work. And just recently, I found out that you and my uncle share a mutual friend in Coach Barnett.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Yeah, he was telling me good stories of the old Rifles.
He's a good dude. He was a good dude. I miss him a lot. Go ahead, man.
In a time when we should be, talking about football and the Subway Series and all this stuff, it's being clouded by this. And just no matter how you feel on which side you're on, I'm currently stuck right now on 5th and Madison and have been since your show started, and I've been listening since the beginning. And I'm just telling people, fans of your show, fans of ESPN, New York, just be easy on your commute home, man, because it's too much to be, there's people protesting here, and just let them be, man. Just go about your business. That's all.
Well,
just be safe and be easy.
Well, you be safe, be easy, but at the same time, the country has never progressed by people just sitting around and letting things be. That's never been who we are as a nation. Let's keep that in mind. You just want people to be peaceful. Just be peaceful.
That's all.
And be God-fearing and not be about the business of harming anybody. Just be committed to making the world a better place.
Yes, sir.
All right, man. Thank you. Let's go to Calvin. You're live with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. What's up, Cal?
Hey, Stephen A. Thank you for taking my call, sir.
Go ahead, man. No problem.
Man, I just want to comment. I hear your boy Carlton calling in all the time, man. And this time he called in, I want to rip my radio out. And I'm going to say real quick, Stephen A., I don't think the black athlete can appease a certain section of fans. And I don't want to be black and white, but I'm going to say white conservative fans. They will never be able to 100% appease them by nothing they do as far as if they're just not playing sports. Because he called in and he said, I agree with 70% of what LeBron said. LeBron didn't take a knee to protest the flag. He didn't do it after a game. He didn't do it before a game. He did it on his private, personal time to a certain group of people. And he made what any normal, sane, centered person could view as an objective statement.
Well, Calvin,
about what happened.
Calvin, let me interject. Here's the part where I would disagree with you. Carlton didn't say that anything should be done to LeBron James. He didn't say that LeBron James shouldn't be playing in the league. He has the right to disagree. Now, in Colin Kaepernick's case, he's like he don't blame them at all for not giving Colin Kaepernick a job. In LeBron James' case, he wasn't talking about any ramifications or repercussions or whatever. LeBron James had a comment. He disagreed with about 30% of it and agreed with about 70% of it. There's nothing to have a problem with that. It's just like you listening to me, and you might agree with most of what I said and don't agree with certain other things. That's your right.
But I never get that angry.
Don't trip like that. And here's why. He's being passionate about his perspective, just like you're passionate about yours. And you might communicate different than him, like I communicate different than a lot of people. It doesn't mean we're angry. It means we're passionate about the point that we're making as it pertains to a particular subject.
I got one more thing to say, Steve.
Sure.
Two things, but real quick. I listen to Karen Hunter every time, right after your show.
That's my baby girl. That's my sister,
man,
right? That's my sister.
Man,
we go back 26 years.
She talks about you, and I'm like, that's crazy. I listen to Stephen A. and then Backdoor with Karen Hunter on 126. But, she's doing some good things. But, man, I was going to say about Ezekiel Elliott. I'm a Cowboys fan. Do not hate Stephen A. I don't want to hear you hating. when their suspension get reduced to 1 or 2 games.
It's not going to get reduced. There's no way in hell it's going to get reduced to 1 or 2 games. I promise you that.
I'm just saying.
I mean, we're not hating.
Listening.
We're not hating. Hey, go listen. I want you to listen. It don't mean that I got to say what you want me to say. The man is associated with domestic violence, and they've got like 5 separate incidences over 3 separate days. And regardless of what he comes up with, it ain't going to be anything that the commission and the league office didn't already investigate. There is no way on earth that Ezekiel Elliott is going to get that suspension reduced to 1 or 2 games. I believe that to be as close to impossible as it gets. We shall see, but I sincerely doubt it. Appreciate the call. Mustafa, you're live with Stephen A. Go ahead, buddy.
Hey, buddy, I hope you're doing good, but I'm giving you an international perspective because I'm not American. You know,
okay.
What LeBron said, I absolutely 100% support what he has to say, you know. He's raising awareness to what this man is doing. This man, your president, showed his true colors yesterday. Because the day before, it looked like he wasn't sincere. It was like he was reading off a transcript, okay? And he reiterated his original point that he made earlier, this president. And to him to not fully blame these hate groups, it is beyond appalling. So I applaud LeBron James and even Kobe for saying something, and any other athlete that has the platform to do what they want to do. 100% support them on this. But my other point about Colin Kaepernick, okay, if I was an NFL owner in light of what's been happening and I see all of these athletes standing up and voicing their concerns, and there has to be a balance between appeasing the public and improving your roster, okay? I know Colin Kaepernick did some stupid stuff. His girlfriend did some stupid stuff, ridiculously racist stuff. But I'm going to look at my priority is improving my team before appeasing the public. If Colin Kaepernick is better than a certain quarterback, I'll take him, regardless. Even if he's a bit of a distraction, at least he improves my team.
Got it. Appreciate the call, Mustafa. Thank you so much. 866-729-ESPN. That's 866-729-3776. More of your calls to close out the show in a minute. It's the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
There's a story circulating as we speak. Des Bryant quiet on national anthem protests. Quote, I got a family to feed. Some reporter posted his remarks on Twitter. John Machota, Des Bryant, wanted him to take it down. Honestly, John, you need to take that BS down because you know how it looks. I'm focused on football right now. Listen, my life is more than a effing football. Get real. I'm disappointed in you. Don't quote me on nothing. Y'all asked me about it, and I wasn't in the mood to talk about it. Not saying I don't care about it. I got a family to feed. Bro, it's the wrong place and time to be talking about that. I care about my black people. At the same time, I have a family. Des Bryant was in the news for that. That's circulating nationally. In the case of Hugh Jackson, head coach for the Cleveland Browns, he's on the record when asked the question. He was alluding to Marshawn Lynch sitting down on a cooler eating a banana. But he's basically saying that as a football coach, hey, we won 15 last year. I want us focused on football. I don't want any distractions when I'm being asked about this every single day. I personally disagree with both, but I respect both of their positions, and both of them have a right to take it. Des Bryant's a football player. He's not an orator. He's not an activist. He's not that guy. And with his checkered past, why bring additional attention to yourself? You know what most Americans are going to think? He sits down and kneels for the national anthem. They're going to be like, who the hell are you? With your troubled and checkered past, you should be happy that you're in the NFL, being in a position to make these millions, and you're going to snub your nose at the American flag? Please. Des Bryant is, listen, I disagree with the position per se, but I understand why he would take that stance. And I support it. I support Des Bryant taking that position because of who he is. He don't need that kind of attention. And in the case of Hugh Jackson, I don't support it at all because, hey, with Hugh Jackson, you're an African-American coach. You stand on the shoulders of those who pioneered and paved the way for you to be in this position. And a lot of times they were athletes willing to take a stance before you ever came along. So you can't be in the position that you're in and then take the position that you don't necessarily want these guys. You're not stopping them because he didn't say he would stop them. He didn't say he would discipline or punish them. What he said was his personal preference would be that they didn't bring that kind of attention to the team because they're coming off a 1-15 season. That's essentially what he said. I still respectfully disagree. I shouldn't say I disagree with Des Bryant's position because I don't. I do disagree with Hugh Jackson's position, but I respect it and understand where he's coming from. And it doesn't make them sellouts to their race, and they're not standing up for the cause. They're telling you they need to handle their personal business to be able to stand up at all. And we have to respect that, too. Back to the phones we go. Ken in L.A., you're live with Stephen A. What's up?
Hey, Stephen. I was just calling up real quick. It was about LeBron James. I really agree with what he was talking about, but it's also about educating your own family and your kids and letting them know about how the United States, the history of the United States. I think the athletes that are sitting down are doing what they can to help out the inner city kids who don't get a chance to, who don't know about slavery and who don't know about how we were treated way back in the day. A lot of kids don't know. I mean, right now we have white kids and Hispanic kids using the N-word. I think that if you, Stephen A., were at a store and you saw two white kids or white men using the N-word, what would you do? What would you say? Would you say anything or would you let it slide? Because I know back in the day that would be cause for a fight.
Can I be honest?
Like that.
You're saying if what happened?
If you not overheard, but just heard like white kids or Hispanic kids using the N-word.
I wouldn't like it at all, but I got to tell you, it depends on the environment. Today's stuff is so crazy. Cats could be packing. One kid will say yes, sir. Another kid will pull out a gun and might shoot you.
Right,
and you just don't know.
Because kids are not educated. They're saying the N-word, but they don't know.
I understand that, but you're asking me what I would do. See, you're changing the subject. You're asking what I would do, and I'm saying that it depends on the environment. It depends on the circumstances. One situation might be totally harmless. Another situation might get you killed.
Right. Well, none of the LeBron. Well, with what LeBron said earlier yesterday, it would not get him killed, and what.
That's fair.
It's the
end of the show, so I gotta go. It's the end of the show, so we can touch on this tomorrow. But I hear where you're coming from totally, and I get where you're coming from. Appreciate the call. Let's go to Cliff. You're live with Stephen A. Real quick, Cliff, go.
Yes, Stephen A. Look, man, number one fan here. Check it out. My wife mentioned something to me yesterday that was very profound. She actually heard this on a Ricky Smiley show. So you got haters out there, right?
Yeah. Go ahead.
You think? Guess what? Would you go to their front door and knock on their front door and say, hey, why do you hate me?
Nope.
No. Exactly. So my wife said that she heard that and it was profound. Instead of going out and counter-protesting these folks, why not, if these folks are going to go out and have a rally, folks should have a counter-rally doing something positive. Okay? Who in the heck cares about somebody that doesn't hate them?
Stop right there, Cliff. And you'll have to call back tomorrow for me to elaborate on this more extensively, but be clear. Those protesters came to Charlottesville, Virginia. The counter-protesters were already there. And so because they were already there, from my understanding, they were already there. And a white nationalist group came to the town. And that's how it got ugly. Anthony, you're live with Stephen A. Real quick, Anthony, go.
Yeah, Anthony, Stephen A.
Yep.
I just wanted to comment on the gentleman.
You only got a minute, so just go ahead and comment. Okay. Go ahead.
All right, the colleague you had on earlier who said that LeBron James should respect the office of the president.
Will Cain. Will Cain.
Yes, sir, Will Cain. But where was the compassion or the passion for the respect of the office when Barack Obama was blatantly called a liar on national television during the State of the Union address?
Well, that doesn't have anything to do with Will Cain or Will Cain or Donald I wouldn't say Donald Trump with the birther movement.
But he said respect the office. Right. We're talking about the respect of the office.
But Will Cain felt that way when the guy yelled at the president too.
I didn't hear. Well, okay. Well, I didn't hear him saying speak out against that back then.
What I'm saying is we got to graduate from that point, because you called up here because you thought you didn't hear Will speak about it at that particular moment in time, but he ended up doing. So the point, what if you had been right and Will didn't speak on that? So what? That's one person. Whereas most people would agree that congressman should have respected the office and respected President Obama when he was speaking during the State of the Union address. Let's not waste time making those points. Talk to y'all in 22 hours. Peace and love, everybody. Stephen A. Smith signing off. Until then, later.